Hi, everyone. It's great to see you. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Midweek Mastery Call. This is your quick, powerful way to just check in, refocus so that you can get back to your confident, grounded self. So, if we have not met yet, I am Abby Cameron, a confidence coach. I help women master their mindset, I help them set healthy boundaries and step into their most confident selves so that they can go off and lead the lives that they want to lead. So today we're going to be talking about that guilt trap that most of us have fall into whenever we start to set boundaries. And it's one of my most favorite topics because when I started coaching, the theme that seemed to pop up over and over again, especially with women, was our lack of boundaries and how those lack of boundaries was actually leading to unhealthy, unhappy, unsatisfied lives. So I can't wait to jump in and talk about it. So we're going to talk about a little bit about what boundaries are, why do we feel guilty about setting them, and you'll walk away with some actionable steps to help you start feeling guilt-free today. So you are not the only one that struggles with boundaries. Even I, with all my tools, still struggle with boundaries. Let me give you an example. So, a few years ago, when I was going through a divorce, I became hyper aware of negativity, of the toxic people that were in my life. And at that time, I had a lot of unwinding, a lot of healing that I needed to do. I needed quiet, I needed positivity, I needed love, I needed support. Well, I happen to be someone that a lot of people in my life are drawn to just naturally, right? For whatever reason, I help them feel comfortable, help them feel safe. And so I always draw these people into my life that take a lot of energy from me. And so I noticed during that time period, those people were still coming around. And pre-divorce, I probably didn't realize how much they actually were an energy suck for me. And it became very clear, as I said, when I was hypersensitive to sort of that negativity all the time, that I was going to have to set boundaries. And it was incredibly hard because these are people that are close to my inner circle, close to me in my life. And all of a sudden I'm saying, no, I don't want you to come over. No, I can't spend time with you because I needed to be able to protect my own energy, protect my own well-being, especially my mental well-being at that time as I was healing through the very traumatic process of divorce. So boundaries are difficult to set, but they are the foundation for a happy, confident life. If you have boundaries, you can easily go and do anything. So let's talk a little bit about why boundaries matter. First of all, let's talk about what boundaries are. What do I mean when I say boundaries? So boundaries are these invisible lines that we draw that protect our time, they protect our energy, they protect our emotions, and many times even protect our values. Without setting boundaries, we end up going through feelings of resentment. We'll start to feel drained energetically, like it's exhausting to hang out with certain people. And without them, it's just we sometimes start to withdraw. So, with strong boundaries, we actually start to create healthier relationships. So, by saying no, we can actually have healthier relationships and we can start to feel a lot more confident in our choices. So, what happens when we don't set healthy boundaries? Well, let me give you an example of a client that I had worked with for a long time. She came to me specifically to set boundaries around her family. And what would happen is she had two young children, and her mom, of course, being a new grandmother, wanted to come over all the time, spend as much time with her new grandkids as she could. But with that came a lot of chaos. She was coming over whenever she wanted, sometimes without scheduling anything in advance. She was bringing a ton of sugar. And to my client, that was one thing that she really valued in her life, was making sure her kids were eating very healthy, limiting the amount of sugar they were taking in. So her mom completely kind of disregarded that, would bring all of this sugar over. Would also bring over a ton of toys, so that it came to the point where her kids started expecting to get presents and toys and sugar every time her mom came around. Well, obviously, you can see where this was going. It crossed the values. It crossed what was important to my clients, even though she kept saying, "No, mom, please, I don't want to feed my kids sugar. My kids nap at this time. I need to know when you're coming over." All the things she said out loud, her mom would completely disregard it and kind of just run her over. Well, that obviously led to a very restrained relationship with her mom. And her life felt a little bit out of her control. Like all of a sudden, she's trying to raise her kids in a certain way, and she can't do that. And so we spent a lot of time really trying to set healthy boundaries. But that's exactly what happens when we have a lack of boundaries in our lives. It opens the door to allowing other people to feel that they can come in and do or say whatever it is that we want. And if we don't have boundaries, we are giving them permission. So, my first question to her when we started working together was why? Why is this so hard for you to say no? Of course, I know the answer, but I needed her to get to that answer to that wisdom within her. The biggest myth that I heard in her and that I hear in so many other women is that boundaries are selfish. If I say no, they're going to stop liking me. If I tell them not to come around anymore, they're no longer going to want to spend time with me. But here's the thing that I need to tell you, and this is incredibly important. Boundaries are about self respect. They are not at all about rejecting other people. So the minute I hear those myths come through the door, well, I don't set boundaries because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, we start to reframe that thinking because it is completely wrong. Boundaries are about self respect, not about rejecting people. So, why do we feel so guilty? Why do we struggle to say no? Well, the most common reasons that women feel guilty about setting boundaries is fear of disappointing other people, like I just said, worrying about seeming rude, worrying about seeming selfish. There's also this belief that's been conditioned into us as women that we are capable of handling everything, that we're great multitaskers, that to be good, we have to say yes. All of those feelings and all of those fears are completely validated. No one taught us how to set boundaries. I can guarantee you, I did not grow up in a household learning what a boundary was, let alone even how to set it. So I did this exercise in my own life where I went through and I was like, okay, who are the people? I made a list of where did I learn boundaries? Who were the people that actually demonstrated boundaries to me? My list is incredibly small. And the examples of the times they actually demonstrated them were few and far between. So it's understandable that we start to feel guilty because nobody really ever taught us how to do this in the first place. And we're always taught to put other people's feelings above our own. But I want to say this, you have nothing to give other people. You are not able to meet the needs of other people if you are not meeting the needs of yourself. So setting boundaries is actually self-care. You will be better for all the other people in your life if you take the time to set boundaries and do the things that feed you and keep you in a healthy state of mind. The other thing I want to say about the reason why we feel guilty is because we spend so much time worrying about other people's business. So you may have heard me say this before, but there are three types of business. There's your business, there's my business, and then there's the universe's, the higher powers business. There's only one of those that you can control. Want to take a guess? That's right. It's your own. I can only control my own business. I cannot control your business. Cannot control the universe of, or the business of the universe. And we spend a lot of time worrying about what other people are going to think, other people are going to feel. No wonder we're miserable sometimes because we can't control it. So we sit in this feedback loop of constantly worrying and wondering what's going to happen on the other side. So, one of the easiest ways to kind of pull back on that guilt a little bit is really think about what's within your control. Stay in your own business. So, how do you set boundaries with confidence? It's like, okay, Abby, that's great. We need boundaries. Boundaries are a form of self respect, a form of self care. Spend more time thinking about the controllables, but how? Well, let me give you some actionable steps so that you can start doing this today. And let me first start off by saying that learning to set boundaries is one thing. I can teach you the formula. I'm going to give you these steps today. But I'm also going to say it's incredibly hard to do. My client that I worked with, that we were working to set healthy boundaries for her family, took a lot of practice because we don't know how to do it. And when we're stepping into something new and there's feelings on the line and we have no idea what kind of behavior that we might get back from the other side, it's an incredibly scary process to step into. So I just want to validate that I understand this is going to be very hard to do. But if you want to make true change in your life, if you want to feel more confident, if you want to have a healthier mindset, you actually have to first start by setting healthy boundaries. And I'm here to help you do that. I'm here to walk you through that process, give you that evidence so that over time it becomes easier and easier for you. So, the first step in setting a boundary with confidence is you have to identify what your boundary is. So I encourage you to do this right now or later on, but make a list of where in your life you need to set stronger boundaries. Take a look at your work environment, take a look at your home environment, take a look at your relationships, your personal time. Where are your boundaries being crossed? Also, when we're talking about boundaries, I mentioned this with my client from earlier, is many times our boundaries are crossed because it's crossing a value that we have set for ourselves, something that we have deemed really important to us, a value, a way in which we want to live our lives, and somebody is disrespecting that or not honoring that value. So, in addition to knowing where maybe you need to set some stronger boundaries, also take some time to figure out what are my values? What is really important to me? And then figure out who or what might be violating those values, and then right there becomes where you need to set healthier boundaries. That's a clear sign for you that that is a boundary that is being crossed. After you've identified your boundaries, okay, you're like, all right, it's this person, it's this situation, it's my boss, my family member, my parent, maybe my grown kids, maybe it's a neighbor. Wherever you've decided that your boundaries need to be set, the next thing that you need to do, step number two, is to communicate that boundary clearly. When you're trying to communicate this boundary clearly, you want to be able to say no, but the key is not to over explain or not to apologize. Okay. This is something that my clients, when we first start learning how to set boundaries and we're working through that process, is we start to script it. So we'll have that conversation in our coaching session where we imagine, that I'm the person that they're wanting to set the boundary with. They practice it many times. And inevitably, 9 times out of 10, the way the conversation starts is, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm so sorry. I just can't. There always seems to be an apology. And my first question as their coach is to put it back in their face and say, why are you apologizing for someone else crossing your boundary? It is not an apology. Because if there is self love, and if there's not, if you are struggling really to set this boundary and to feel like you are standing on equal ground with the person that you are setting it with, that's a different conversation. We need to talk about worthiness. But if you are standing in a place of self love, then there should be no apology for having the conversation with someone about something that's really important to you. Something that they are doing that they may or may not even realize they're doing that you would like them to stop doing. So, first thing is make sure that you are not apologizing. Let me give you an example. So, way, way back, this is probably 15 years ago when I was a director at the YMCA, we had one long hall of offices, and the offices were divided by these really thin walls, no insulation to kind of take care of the sound or anything. So, the person on the other side of me um, would play music, and the speaker was right up against the wall where my desk sat. So I'm sitting there every day at my computer, and all I hear every single day as I'm trying to get work done is thunk, 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 right? The beat of the music. Can't hear the music at all, but I can hear the bass of the music as it's kind of penetrating through these makeshift walls. And so I was getting really frustrated about it. And I'm like, I cannot get anything done. It was incredibly distracting to me. And so it came to the point where it's like, okay, I've got to have a conversation about this. But I had spent so much time getting pissed off about it that there was a number of ways I was going to handle this. I was either going to go over there and scream at him, shut your heavy music off, right? You're driving me crazy. But then I thought, okay, that's probably not going to go over well because I'm making a demand. That's the first thing I want you to remember when you're trying to communicate clearly. Besides not apologizing, you also want to make requests, not demands. So going in and screaming and demanding for him to turn off his music is not setting a boundary in a healthy way. You're just asking or trying to control somebody else's behavior. We don't have that kind of power. So make requests. So different way I could have approached that is with the apology. Like, oh gosh, John, that wasn't his name, but John, I'm really sorry to bother you. But your music is kind of loud and it's like coming through the walls and I just can't get anything done. I'm really sorry, but do you think you could turn it off? That is also not a healthy way to set a boundary. I mean, basically, I'm opening the door to he can choose to turn the music off or not turn the music off. And because I'm not assertive and I'm not making it known that this is important to me and it truly is affecting my mental health, it's affecting my productivity. If I'm not coming across assertive in that way, not angry, assertive, very different there, then he has no reason to really do anything about it, right? And then the third way I can go and do it is to use I statements, right? Stick to my own business, as we talked about a moment ago, and make a request, not a demand. Going to say, John, I'm not sure if you realize this or not, but your music is really loud and it's so close to my wall. I would appreciate it if you turned it down because my productivity is being affected by this. So it's kind, it's clear, it's stating a problem that he may or may not even had realized was happening. And of course, because I approached it that way, he came back and was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Let me move the speaker and see if that works. And if not, we'll come up with something else. So it was the best possible outcome for me, but I had to communicate in a very clear and effective way that wasn't apologetic, that wasn't demanding, it wasn't angry. I basically had to come in and be strong. Like, this is important to me. Here's why it's affecting me. This is what I need to happen, what I need to happen. The other thing you can do, something I've already mentioned, is provide scripts. Because this is really hard to communicate, and we do have that tendency, especially as women, to apologize, is write out what you want to say to the person that you are setting the boundary with, and then practice that. Practice it in the mirror, find somebody you trust to walk you through that conversation. But scripts are a great way to make sure that you communicate effectively. The third step in this process, besides first identifying what your boundaries are, communicating them clearly, the third thing you want to do then is hold the line. So, what do you do when people push back or try to test your boundaries? Well, I'm going to say this to you. People may not be used to you saying no. And I will tell you that if you have people in your life that are emotionally unregulated, pushing back and standing your ground and saying, this is what I need, this is important to me, is not always going to go over well. Understandably, they're not used to you saying no. A lot of times people step over our boundaries in an attempt to control us in some way for something that they need to have their own needs met. So they can easily feel threatened and feel like their needs are not going to be met by you saying no. But I need you to remember this, that is not your problem. That is not your problem. You should never have to compromise yourself to make someone else feel better. It is not your job to make somebody else happy. It is not your job to make somebody else's life better. You can enhance their life. You can help them. You can be a guide. You can love them. But that first starts by staying in your own business and not doing things for them that they want you to do all the time. So holding that line is going to be incredibly important. One tip to kind of try to do that is to don't over explain. So when you're setting your boundary, if you start explaining away why you're setting the boundary, you are opening the door to manipulation and to being broken down. Remember, the fact that you're even having to say this boundary out loud is an incredibly hard conversation to have in the first place if you've never done it before, right? And you don't have that practice and you don't have that confidence. So you need to be able to go and say it confidently and then walk away still intact. Let me give you an example. Let's go back to when I was telling you about sort of the negative people that were trying to continue to steal my time and my energy from me when I was trying to heal from a divorce. What I mean by not over explaining is a perfect example would be a friend of mine who is known to kind of come over and instead of helping me in that situation like I wanted or give me comfort in some way, would come over and completely unload about all the things that were going wrong in their life and sort of expecting me to help them in some way. So I got a phone call. Hey, let's go to dinner. I want to see how you are. I want to be there for you. Let's go have dinner. After becoming aware that I needed to set boundaries, I simply said, no, I'm not available tonight, but I appreciate you thinking about me. That is a way to set my boundary and not over explain anything. Here's the difference. If I would have said, you know what? No, I think I'm just going to go to yoga. And then after yoga, I'm just going to come home and probably just order some takeout and just hang out on the couch. So thank you. But I think I'm going to do that instead. Here's why over explaining can become a problem with a situation, because this is what happened to me when I first started setting boundaries. I thought that was setting the boundary. And then what I realized is the person came back and said, oh, great. I'll go to yoga with you. And then we'll come home. We'll just order takeout and we can sit on your couch and just gab together. At that point, I can't say no, right? I have nowhere else to go. I had no other options. And at that point, yes, I was feeling like if I say no now, they are really going to feel like I am hurting their feelings or I'm rejecting them in some way. And I was sat in their business. So I learned over time to just not over explain. I don't have to give a reason. You don't have to give a reason for why you're setting the boundary. You can still say kind, or you can still stay kind, be kind. You can still be assertive, but you do not have to give an explanation for why you are taking care of yourself. So, just a tip to hold the line, don't over explain, because when you do, that opens the door to manipulation. So I'm going to ask you right now, where in your life do you need to set boundaries? If I were to ask you right now, you're sitting in my office, we're having a coaching session, where in your life do you need to set boundaries? So leave them if you're here with me on the call. Go ahead and just put them in the chat. I'm kind of curious to know if you're watching the replay of this call, then leave me a comment. Let me know. I want to know, where do you struggle with boundaries? What area? And then now I want to ask you, what questions do you have? We talked a lot about boundaries, but let me know what questions you have. Well, you have a minute to think about that. Put them in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and kind of wrap up with some key takeaways, and then I'll jump back to your questions after you've had a minute to kind of think through those. Okay, so recap, thinking about boundaries and that guilt trap that we fall into. Things I want you to remember. Number one, boundaries are a form of self-care and self-respect. They are a form of self-love. So saying no is not mean. Saying no is not selfish. It is necessary to your well-being. You do not have to justify. You do not have to over-explain your decisions. When you set boundaries, especially with people you love, it does not mean that you love them any less. It simply means that you love yourself just as much. And I promise you, if they love you, they're not leaving. Okay? Whether that might be hard to hear or not, they are not leaving. All right. So here's my challenge for you in the next week. I want you to choose one boundary that you are going to reinforce this week, remembering those steps. So first identify what that boundary is. Then have those practice conversations with people or with yourself in the mirror, or write out a script for yourself so that you can communicate that boundary clearly, and then hold the line. Hold the line with that boundary, no matter how hard it is. All right, so let's get to your questions. It looks like there's a couple of them that have come in. Let's see. All right, Emily asks, I always feel guilty saying no, especially to family. How do I set boundaries without feeling like I'm letting them down? Ooh, Emily, I hear you. This is a good one. And in fact, this is where one of the top two places that my clients struggle with setting boundaries the most, either with family members or within the workplace, believe it or not. And so saying no to family can be especially hard because we're taught that love means that we're always supposed to be available to them, that they're family. We should always drop whatever we're doing and be available. But just as I said before, boundaries does not mean that you love your family any less. It means that you love yourself just as much. So instead of thinking that you are letting your family down, one thing I encourage you to do is reframe that thought of I'm letting them down to I am teaching them how to respect my time and energy. And so, one way you can say this is you can try something like, I love you and I wish I could be there. I love you. I want to help, but I can't right now. I love you, but I'm sorry. This is really important to me. Right. So, you're reaffirming that you love them, but you're also just being very clear that, nope, this is not good for you right now. And then it's also signaling that message like they're safe, they feel loved, and that they want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Ultimately, if our family members love us in that way, then they will start to feel like we're it's good that we're taking care of ourselves. Sorry, my words are getting a little jumbled up. But the more you practice, the more natural it's going to feel. Just like my client, like just spoke with her the other day on a catch-up call, and it's like she said it was so hard in the beginning to set boundaries with her mom. And because it's like it's your mom, right? You don't want to let her down. But the more she did it, the better she felt about it. And the more evidence she had when she was able to keep her values, how she wanted to raise her own kids, like her mom didn't go away. Her mom started paying attention. Her mom started respecting her boundaries, and their relationship actually got a lot healthier because of it. So the guilt will go away with time and with practice. Just keep going strong. All right, let's see. Another question. Debbie. Debbie asks, what if someone gets upset or takes it personally when I set a boundary? I don't want to hurt their feelings, but I also don't want to back down. Oh my gosh, this is such a common fear. I'm really glad you asked the question. The truth is, we cannot control how others react. We only can control how we communicate. So if someone is taking offense to your boundary, if they're taking it personally in some way and they're blowing up and they're overreactive or they're emotional, that's a reflection of their expectations and not a reflection of your worth. So let me say that again. If somebody is blowing up or taking offense to your boundary in some way, it is only a reflection of their expectations of you and not a reflection of your worth. That's really important to remember. It's your job to stay firm. You can do it kindly in a very kind manner, but it is your job to stay firm. One thing you can say is, I know this is hard to hear. I know you may not understand, but this is what I need right now. This is what's really important to me. One thing I will say, if somebody kind of blows up emotionally, it is sort of our nature, our tendency to want to fix that, especially if it's somebody we love. So I will say, if somebody is reacting that way, simply give them that statement that maybe you've scripted out in advance so that you have ready. I know this is hard to hear. I know you may not understand, but this is important to me. And then step away and let them have a moment to kind of go through the emotions that they need to go through. And hopefully they'll come back and have a really healthy conversation with you. Again, that's out of our control. I've had it both ways where I've set a boundary and that puts a strain on the relationship moving forward. And I've set a boundary where it actually made the relationship healthier. What I've realized is the relationship that had strain was never meant to be a relationship that I was supposed to stay in. Because if it's a healthy relationship, you should be able to come back, repair, say what's important to you, set your boundaries, have the other set your boundaries, and the other person set their boundaries, and have both of you meet them. That is a healthy relationship. So It's one way to realize that maybe that person isn't meant to be in your life long term, and what can you learn from the relationship and move on. But very good question. That can definitely happen, especially if somebody's trying to control you. They're going to come back very defensive. Have your statement, your firm, assertive statement ready to go, and then just give them some space. And remember that you can't control their reaction. So, all right, on that note, there's a couple of other questions. I'll probably answer those for you in the comments, but we are at our time for today. Um, Next month, the midweek mastery call is going to be on mindset. So, as I mentioned, like having a healthy mindset, having strong confidence all starts with setting boundaries. So, mindset is incredibly important. Did you know that we think over 50,000 thoughts a day and over half of those are negative? So it's one major reason why we have a tendency to get in our own way. So we're going to be talking about that next month. So stay tuned for that call coming up for that date. And we're going to be kind of talking about mindset around the idea of gratitude and how it's one of the most effective tools to keep your mindset healthy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you learned something about boundaries. Again, I challenge you to go out and set one boundary today and stick to it, because I know that you are capable of setting that boundary and you are worthy of setting strong boundaries. Thank you so much for your time. May you live a wild, happy, and abundant life. Thanks so much. Bye.